Man, it just keeps on coming, doesn't it? Every day, something crazier. In the last few weeks, we've been all watching for signs about how our democracy is functioning, and it seems to be slipping day by day, further and further into what can only be described as a totalitarian state. Let's just go over a couple things today. Hi, I'm Jeff Newton, former 60 Minutes producer, former senior producer at Vice on HBO and National Geographic Television. So some things some of these things are around elections, right? So you had Steve Bannon the other day. This is a little bit old news, but it all ties together. Claiming that that the Trump administration is going to have ICE people circling the wagons around election polling stations on the midterms because he says that Democrats aren't going to steal the election again. Again, they have no proof that anybody stole anything at all. The only time that you see people faking votes, if you look at the majority of them, they're always Republicans. And if you guys want to troll and say it's not true, I'll give you 100 examples from the last couple of years. That's the only time you'll find it. That it's 10-1 anytime somebody votes illegally. It's some election fraud things from some Republicans. But let's just get past that. It's not that important. Steve Bannon says, they're going to have ICE officials around polling stations. That is intimidation. That's intimidation. It says to stop illegal voting. But what's to say you're a brown-skinned person, you don't show up at the polling station to vote, and they just pick you up off the streets and hold you for a week or so, right? And then they turn you loose and say, turns out you were an American citizen. You're able to vote. I mean, that would make people in and of itself not want to go to the polls. And that's what they're trying to do, trying to intimidate people. So that's one thing. That's very totalitarian of them. You had Marco Rubio recently, it was either today or yesterday, going to Hungary prior to the Hungarian elections and telling the Hungarian dictator that the United States supports him for his 5th term. Does that sound crazy to you? Everybody loves a dictator. Donald Trump, and said to him specifically that this was in support of the United States' strong support of Orban and his relationship, his personal relationship with Donald Trump, who loves him. So, that's a dangerous sign. We didn't used to do that. We didn't used to go to places where people were dictators and say we love them. I mean, just remember, this really started back in the first term when, Kim Jong-un and him were sending love letters back and forth to each other about North Korea and American relations. Letters that he wanted to keep personally because he thought they were his own. His love affair with Vladimir Putin, who either has something on him or he genuinely likes him because he's a dictator. He says he's a strong guy and he loves strong guys, and that's what he's emulating. So this support of Viktor Orban is a terrible sight for Europe and the rest of Western countries to see Donald Trump put so much support. Do you ever notice he doesn't go to European countries and talk about how much he loves their leaders? He seems to hate them. He hates Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada. Didn't like Justin Trudeau. Must have been him, Trudeau hugging his wife. He didn't really dig, but he doesn't talk this way about Macron. He doesn't talk this way about anybody. But boom, it makes headlines because he goes off to Hungary, of all places, to say how much he, hopes that he wins a 5th term. Crazy town. That's not a good sign. Back in October, I think it was, he talked about how he was going to have these National Guard units of 500 troops for crowd control, for emergency crowd control, quick reaction forces, QRFs is what they call them in the military, to react to crowd control. To me, that's slipping pretty dangerously towards having U.S. military involved in domestic policy, which we are not supposed to do. And he's tried that a few times in some cities, and it's been slapped down by the courts. And largely, a lot of these governors have gotten their hands wrapped around it, like in Minnesota, where Governor Walz was able to use them in a way that settled the nerves of protesters, because they were going up to protesters and offering them donuts and coffee. It was great. But Trump wants to use these military-type figures, people in uniforms with guns, to intimidate the public. And he hasn't taken that off the table for future operations. Department of Homeland Security. It's been reported recently by the New York Times. Remember, I told you, follow the New York Times. They do good reporting. That the Department of Homeland Security has subpoenaed the names of accounts people, meaning, people like me and you, who are critical of ICE. So the government wants to have those names and have them on a list to investigate them. Think about that. By the way, don't waste your time with subpoena, Donald. I'm here. We're all here. We're all here. You're going to be arresting millions of us. Jeez. Has he ever heard of the First Amendment at all? Only when it comes to him, right? So, dangerous development. When private companies comply with these things, and they have in the past, by the way, some of them in the past in this administration already, there's stories out about it, they are giving in to government's requests without any real violation of the law. There's no violation of the law for me to criticize ICE. By the way, they're criminals. These guys have been acting like thugs and criminals, and they deserve everything they get. So take that for what it's worth, Mr. President. Me and others, like Robert Reich, is former administration, was in the former administration of the Clinton administration, has been very outspoken of your administration. There's a lot of people, actually a lot of the great thinkers in this country, Joyce Vance and, Heather Cox Richardson and all these independent journalists that are not stuck by these oligarchs who've been buying up the media companies and turning them into the next Pravda. We're out there telling people, watch out, Midas Touch, all those folks. Democracy Docket, suing the shit out of you on everything and winning, by the way. So these are organizations and people that are private in many ways, have small operations relative to the large media, mainstream media. And we're calling it like it is. We're calling the balls and strikes, and we're saying, listen, this is dangerous. This is very dangerous for the government to be assembling a list of people that they do not like because we're being critical of them and using our free speech rights under the First Amendment to be critical of them. That's a totalitarian step. And it goes right part and parcel with the next piece of information, which is that the secretaries of state and election officials from all across the country have been summoned to meetings, whether it be online meetings or in the presence of White House officials. We're not quite sure. I think it's probably online, where they give them information on how they can help them during the elections, the upcoming elections. Unprecedented, by the way. And there's members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation that are involved in this stuff, right? It's supposed to be February 25th. This is from actually Joyce Vance. She wrote a piece about it. And remember I told you really early on, follow Joyce Vance for legal matters, and also Democracy Docket. I think those two are the best ones out there. They're independent report on what's going on in the legal realm. But dear Chief Executive Election Officials, this was sent to the Secretary of State of Maine. To prepare for the 2026 midterm elections, your election partners at the FBI, DOJ, et cetera, and the EAC would like to invite you to a call where we can discuss our preparations and updates and resources we can provide to you and your staff. And they give the name and time of the call. You can designate a proxy if you're not available. Wednesday, March 4th, we'll hold a similar call for members. Anyways, we look forward to your speaking to you, and we look forward to speaking with you in support of the 2026 midterm elections. By a Kelly Hardiman, FBI election executive. And people that worked in past administrations have never heard of this title, ever. So it's something they probably created. What's the FBI getting involved in state elections for? No. This is a totalitarian power grab from the federal government, who should have nothing to do with elections. The only time they have anything to do with elections is they run, and the states tally it up, send it to them, and we know who the next person is. That's what they're supposed to do. So this is another power grab from the Republican Party to try to seize more control of federal elections. Donald Trump, you remember, he's already said that elections should be run by the federal government. That's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. We all know this, especially with this guy in charge. But it's not a good idea anyways to have the federal government running it. It's not a good look, by the way, because then you have the person in power who's, wielding power on an election that he has a vested interest in. So that's why it's set up the way it is. So states run it. That's very totalitarian, and you need to be very careful about that and voice this concern to your state representatives. Mine is Ben Klein. He's going to be getting a letter from me. I write him every now and then. He even writes me back, but he's still a MAGA guy, you know? So you got to tell these people, we're upset. We do not like the idea of the federal government getting in our business. Aren't we the party, the Republican Party, aren't they the party of small government? Every time they turn around, it's another thing that they want to do and control. They used to say, we hate big government. Biden, big government. Obama, big government. Clinton, big government. No, man, you guys are imposing big government on everything, okay? The Republican Party. So, not a really good look. DHS wanting to have databases, right? Did you hear about this? Tom Homan talked about, putting people in databases, taking their pictures if they're protesting, what he calls agitators. And he said he's going to send this to the people you work for and the schools you go to so that you're on their list, right? So this is intimidation. If you want to exercise under Tom Homan your free speech rights, they're going to put you on a database. Really? Is that how democracy is supposed to work? This is what they think. This is fascism with a capital F. The same thing for the Google Meta stuff that they want to, and all the other social media they're sending subpoenas to for people like me and people like you. They want to know if we're agitators because we're speaking our mind, which we have a legal right to do, protected by the U.S. Constitution under the very First Amendment. So this is intimidation. They want to be able to monitor all your... Come monitor my social media. I don't give a shit. I think you guys are crooks and criminals. We have to be willing to stand up as a country to tell people that we have a right to protest. We have a right to argue with our government over things we think are wrong. And certainly in a democracy, we have a right to point out fascism. My grandfather fought in 2 world wars. The First and Second World War. It's a pretty unprecedented thing. First for Great Britain and then for Canada. And many of your family members and grandfathers and grandmothers were some part of this last war from World War II. They fought to stomp this shit out. And it's coming to our own country. I had somebody write me today. I get thousands of comments today. I try to read them all. Somebody wrote me and said, I never thought in my 60s I would be, spending my last years fighting fascism in my own country. She said that. And here's what I said to her. Our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought fascism all around the world for us, on the beaches of Normandy, in the deserts of Africa, all over the world. They fought fascism for us. And they expect us, when they leave, that life would be easier. But if it's not, they expect us to pick up the torch and fight fascism around the world where, because we're a democracy, we're supposed to be the ones fighting fascism throughout the world. And if it's at home, it's at home. So we have to do it lawfully. We have to do it, by using our free speech. We have to do it by, checking our elected officials and telling them what we want. We have to be active on, with groups that are doing it lawfully and legally. We have to encourage people to join election cycles where they run good candidates. We have to be going to volunteer for election boards and working on election day, so we can be a witness to what this stuff is happening and help people. We have to be registering people to vote so that people are registering to vote. And we have to fight laws that are trying to be pushed through by Republicans in dozens of states and on a federal level to take away our rights to vote. Because that's the one thing we all have that's equal, is the right to vote. So these databases and all this shit. And then there's the CBS thing. The FCC continuing to stick its nose in where it doesn't belong. Stephen Colbert, who's on his way out at CBS, but is kicking and screaming all the way. Thank you, Stephen, for holding up the talisman for what's left of CBS since the Ellison family, David Ellison, took over, I guess, as chairman of Paramount Skydance after the merger they had, and got rid of Stephen Colbert for strictly business reasons. It just so happens he criticizes Trump every night, and just so happens the Ellison family dumps tons of money into the Trump campaign. It's one of the richest families in the world, right? Larry Ellison, the father, owns Oracle. Just remind you of that, one of the largest companies in the world. And on any given day, he could, depending on his stock price and his investments, he could be one of the richest men in the world on any given day. Owns an island in Hawaii with 87,000 acres. Come on. These people don't give a shit about freedom. They want power. And they want to put it in the hands of people who will help them keep it, which is the fascist Donald Trump, who only knows power. So Stephen Colbert had an interview with the U.S. Senate candidate, James Tallarico, who's running up against Senator Cornyn in Texas. And, it got out there that they were doing this interview, and the FCC somehow got in touch with people at, who knows? But the lawyers from Paramount got in touch with the Colbert Show and said, you shouldn't run this interview, because the FCC has told us that it's, you have to give equal time to other candidates. I say do it. I say put Tallarico on your show, let him say what he wants, and then get U.S. Senator, the great senator from Texas, on your show, the Republican who supports all these Trump bullshit, and just read the Epstein list to him and see what his reaction is. Give him equal time. See what he's doing. Every time somebody said they wanted equal time, I'd get him on there and just grill the shit out of him, politely, and with a few jokes in there, like Stephen does so well. Don't be scared of equal time. Definitely don't pull them off your show, and let them fire you, and then sue the shit out of them because they violated your contract. So Stephen Colbert sort of carried that torch. They told Stephen he shouldn't even talk about it, that they told him to pull it. And he said, no, I'm going to tell you. He told his audience that they made him pull the interview. And then they put it onto YouTube. And people can go find it there. I think they should do more. Keep doing more with Senate candidates, U.S. senators. If Republicans want to go on the show and explain some of their bullshit, I'd put them on there. But I'd also remind you of a couple things. Every time they say they want equal time for things, first of all, we don't have the fairness doctrine anymore, which meant two sides had to have an opportunity to present its side so that the arguments seemed more fair from a news perspective. And Reagan got rid of that. The Republican got rid of that. So now they have this thing with, it has to have equal time on these talk shows. And if you don't do it, you're in violation of the FCC, which I think is a violation of the First Amendment. If a show wants to put whatever it wants on, you should let them put it on there. I mean, nobody goes and tells Fox News or any of the Fox shows that they have to give equal time to everybody else, right? You certainly don't see all the smartest Democrats on Fox. They're not doing that. And by the way, when the 60 Minutes, CBS, and Barry Weiss, our favorite editor-in-chief over at CBS News, who was personally handpicked by the Donald Trump Ellison family to run CBS News with no broadcast experience whatsoever, and she brought in all their other friends who have no broadcast experience whatsoever. They pulled the piece on CCOT, the El Salvadorian prison, from Sharon Alfonsi, because they said that the administration didn't have an opportunity to respond to the story, and they gave them months to respond to it. I know how 60 Minutes works. And then they held the piece for like over a month. They finally aired it in early January when nobody's watching. And guess what? It didn't have an interview with anybody from the administration, which is what I said was going to happen. They don't want to talk to you. They just want to fuck with you. They don't want to be sitting down in a camera getting grilled. They just want to come up with an excuse why you don't air what you want to air. So put them on the air and grill them. Let them all look like Pam Bondi did the other day in the judiciary hearing, where she didn't answer a single question because she lies. And what they do is this is what totalitarians do. They don't answer questions legitimately. They just attack. You ask a question, it's simple, easy to answer. Has so-and-so spoken to so-and-so about this? And they say, well, I don't know. Have you spoken to so-and-so about that? You just answer the question. They won't do that because of totalitarian government. The regime always attacks. They never answer. They're never accountable. They're always attacking. So, give them equal time. I'd ask them about the Epstein files. Get them on all your shows and ask them about the Epstein files. Give them equal time. The guys that are running against, Thomas Massey in Kentucky, they're going to primary him. Yeah, give their candidates equal time. What would you do about the Epstein files, sir, madam? And then let Thomas Massey talk about it again. Give them equal time. Then ask the Democrats who are running maybe against his seat what they would do. Give them all equal time. There's nothing wrong with shedding light on a democracy. Be fair about it. I don't care. Anyways, I think these are some of the things they've done just in the last few weeks that I think really should raise the alarms. Our democracy's in peril. We need to, I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm not trying to be, hyperbolic about the whole thing, but we need to stay focused, and people need to continue. If you've never kept up with the news, this is your time to do it. Don't go to Fox News. They're liars. Go to some reputable news organizations. Start seeking out people who will tell you the truth. And just understand that there's new media organizations and all this. I mean, all the while, you have Netflix battling it out to try to buy Warner Brothers, which owns CNN. I support that. And then you have Paramount Skydance trying to do the same thing. It's these hostile takeovers of these companies so they can turn them all into Pravda. You remember that? The Russian propaganda network. Before it was just state TV. And now they create state TV by letting rich people who are donors to Donald Trump buy these networks up, and they're going to own them forever. So there has to become new news organizations that develop and start reporting from the news from the perspective of people that are going to tell you the truth and be honest about it. Now, they're small, and when they get sued, they're going to have a lot harder time defending it, but we're going to survive it. They can't sue everybody. So, we're going to keep fighting to tell the truth. So anyways, thanks, Misfits. Substack, keep reminding you guys, monthly subscriptions, $8, annual, $80, save yourself $16. Big money. Come on over and follow us there. I think even Holly might even put something on From the Writer's Cabin on our Facebook page for it's like a $2 a month thing. It basically pays for a coffee and, maybe some treats for Georgie and Dixie. You could do that, start out. And if you like what we're doing, head on over to Substack, where we give you first crack at our podcasts and being a part of interviewing and asking questions to people that we talk to each week and asking questions to me what you think about things. So, yeah, please do that. Sorry it's a bit long today. We covered about 4 or 5 little topics. Yeah. All right, Misfits. Like, follow, and share. The best thing you do for me if you can't afford to be on a Substack is share. Say something about what you saw and share it with people so that they come to us and start. And those people who can afford it, they'll join as paid subscribers. But if you can afford it, it'd be great. Like, follow, and share. Our merchandise is on both our Substack page, a link for that, and also From the Writer's Cabin on Facebook. You'll see us across all platforms on From the Writer's Cabin. From the Writer's Cabin. So thanks for showing up tonight. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.